Okay, just a moment, let me check. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Okay, so we are audible enough? Voice is clear? Yes, so it's audible. Okay, so without taking much time, this side is Monica, and I welcome all of you for a second lecture of 5-week seminar series titled Understanding the State of Social Sciences. And I welcome Professor Greenfield. Uh, okay, so I think you may continue with the lecture. So we won't spend too much time on introduction today. Okay, so over to you, Professor Greenfield.
Okay.
We can
All
wait
right.
for a minute if you want,
Are there many
because
people?
yeah, there are only 17, 18 people. So we can wait 1-2 minutes more because we have
Okay.
still time.
Okay.
It's
Well,
still, yeah. In meanwhile, if you have any queries or question, you can drop in the chat box. I can see, and maybe we'll discuss this now.
yeah, there was one very interesting question actually in my email
Oh, great.
from Rachna Yadav.
Okay.
Yes.
Rachna, yeah, Rachna
yeah,
Yadav. She also
yes.
wrote to me.
Oh, she also wrote to you. And she asked uh, me to elaborate how nationalism shifted the focus of interest onto the empirical world. We can discuss it now if you want, or we can discuss it later. I don't know if
Okay.
Rachna is here.
No, not yet.
Okay, then we'll discuss it later. But I find your questions in general very interesting, so continue asking, and maybe we'll be able to discuss them at a certain point. I hope that some of you have. What is the time now?
It's 11, exact 11.
It's just now.
There's one question. Do you want to
Well,
start
you can
just now? So it says that, ma'am, it is understood from the article that you suppose a distinction between natural sciences and social sciences from a science of humanity, the latter being defined through the concept of culture as symbols. To really get into this very point, I would want to learn how would you define understand Bourdieu's habitus as structural emanating from the social or, or cultural or both. If we can understand habitus as also a structuring element, how do we yet make the separation between social and human sciences intact? It is a clarificatory question. So this Priyanka wants to clarify in case.
No, in this, this will take us too far away from our subject.
Okay. So we'll do it later.
So we'll do it later if we can. And to begin answering this question, Priyanka, you should remember that Bourdieu is a social scientist, and social sciences in general are not sciences at all. They are, in fact, as I explained in the first lecture, they only use the word science to promote their own interests, the careers of social scientists, but they're not interested in the reliable, that is, objective understanding of reality, of what exists in regard to humanity, and therefore we have to formulate our own science that would replace the social sciences because social sciences do not really contribute anything to our understanding. They fundamentally mislead us. So it is not really interesting for those who are interested in the understanding of what is, what exists. It is not really interesting to discuss views of social theories of social scientists. They are purely speculative. They are not objective, not reliable, and do not explain anything. Now, let us this time, uh, as we discussed before, the problems with social sciences, and decided that we have to move from social sciences, which are fraudulent, to move from them to a new science, something that would in fact be a science, like biology, like physics, focusing on a particular kind of reality, on a particular aspect of our empirical reality, what we experience, and what we want to focus in this case, um, are not trees and not stones, but human beings and their lives. So, to do this, we have to ask, what is humanity? Now, I do hope that at least some of you have read um, the Substack post that I posted in preparing this lecture. There were two, uh, and one dealt specifically with this question. And I asked you there to think a little bit, to just take 2 minutes and think, what is humanity? Humanity, of course, is very central in the thoughts and in the lives of every one of us. And in particular, in the thoughts and in the lives of people who are professionally, like you, interested in understanding humanity. So humanity is very centrally in your thoughts, and usually we think that we know what it is. Uh, it appears to us that surely we know what it is, because so very much appears to depend on the answer to this question, what is humanity? Right? Uh, f- for example, some of us, some of you are interested in politics, uh, in democracy, in nationalism, um, in various policies, in economic policies. Um, and to answer those questions, to uh, um, arrive at exactly policies that you would like to see or wouldn't like to see, it all depends on what is humanity, right? We would like to know, for example, is democracy the optimal political um, arrangement for humanity? Or maybe it is authoritarianism that is much better for humanity. So this, to answer those questions, we must first of all know what is humanity. If we want to answer the question, is you freedom, for example, is freedom and personal choice are the desire, natural desire and need of human beings. To answer this question, we also must first answer what is humanity? Um, if we think about various economic arrangements, this depends upon what is best for humanity. So it depends upon what is humanity. When we think about questions of personal choice, should marriage be arranged, or is it better for marriage to be a love marriage? Again, this depends upon what is humanity. Is it better for whom? For humanity. And for this, we must understand humanity's nature, right? So it appears that we should know, all of us should know, what is humanity. But take 2 minutes. I uh, hope that those of you who did read that post, you did take 2 minutes. And during those 2 minutes, you thought and tried to give yourself the answer to this question, what is humanity? And what? You realized immediately after 2 minutes that you do not know what is humanity. So the great majority of us, the great majority of you do not know what is humanity, even though this is such an essential question. Now, people who are not like you, lazy thinkers, believe those who need to know, they do know. And they're satisfied with this, even though themselves they don't know. Such lazy thinkers in the West, they presume that science knows. And they presume that science defines humanity very clearly as the species Homo sapiens. Again, take another 2 minutes to think, and you will realize that this is nonsense. For many of you, it may be important that to understand yourself, to arrive at a self-understanding. Many of you are probably thinking about that. What am I? Who am I? How should I organize my life? This is a fascinating question. Now, think if somebody gives you the end, this of course depends on the answer to the question, what is humanity? You wouldn't be able to understand yourself if you do not know what is humanity as a precondition. So, now think, if somebody tells you authoritatively, science tells you, humanity is a particular biological species, the biological species of Homo sapiens. Now, will this help you to understand yourself? You will tell yourself, okay, so what it means is that my genome is 1%, 1.2% is different from the genome of a chimpanzee. I am like a chimpanzee, very much like a chimpanzee, about 99% like a chimpanzee. Will this help you to understand yourself? No. Will this help you answer those questions that we have already raised, about politics, about marriage. Um, is it better to have a love marriage or arranged marriage? If you are just the species Homo sapiens, this is completely nonsensical. So, thinking is the central requirement of this class. So, in this class, nobody is allowed to be a lazy thinker. You all the time must think actively. So, what this means is that we must know what is humanity. We must try and answer this question. And how? We are not just interested in some speculative answer. No, we want to answer it definitely. That is scientifically the only possible answer. We want to have a reliable answer, objective answer, the same for everyone. We want to answer this question correctly. Its basis must be relevant, logical, empirical comparison. Okay. Because humanity is the subject matter of our science. Humanity is the focus of our science. This means, to begin with, humanity is not biological reality. Humanity is not physical reality. Because if it were biological or physical, there would be absolutely no reason for our special science. We would have to be satisfied with physics and biology. And they would have to give us the answer to the question, what is humanity? But they're completely uninterested in this question. Okay, so this means, you see, we're proceeding logically. And this is the only way we can proceed in science. This means that humanity is irreducible to the material or organic phenomena. To the material or organic realities. It is not simply matter or life. This means that humanity, which is empirical, we all know it exists, it is all around us, right? Humanity is not material. It is not a material phenomenon. It is real and it is empirical, but it is not material. It's of a different nature. Just like life is not material, it is organic. And humanity is not material and not organic. even though life exists in the boundary conditions, in the conditions of life, that is, of organic reality, and together with life, in the conditions of material reality, humanity is neither organic nor material. This means that humanity is a reality, an empirical reality, which we constantly experience, of its own kind. It is of its own kind. This means it has laws of its own. It is autonomous. This is what the word autonomy means. It has laws of its own, or in other words, causality of its own. Okay. But what kind? Of what kind? So we arrive logically at the conclusion that humanity is a special reality, a reality of its own kind. But what kind? You remember last time we asked the same question about life. And Darwin allowed us to see life as an autonomous reality, a reality of its own kind. And how did he allow us to see that and define it? He found something, an empirical phenomenon that separated, applied to all of life, but did not apply to anything material that was not life. So we too, we must understand what empirical quality, something that exists, distinguishes humanity from life in the conditions of which it exists, and without which, obviously, it couldn't exist, right? We are more than a form of life. We, humanity, we are more than a form of life. But of course, we are a form of life. And if we weren't a form of life, if we weren't alive, well, there would be no humanity and no discussion about humanity, right? So we must find that empirical quality that separates us, humanity, humans, from all the other animals on earth. What can help us to find such an empirical quality? What can help us such an empirical quality is comparative zoology. We must rely on a relevant and logical comparison. So comparative zoology is capable of showing us this quality. And immediately we see that humanity, human species, is distinguished from all other animals, even very complex and intelligent animals, even social animals, highly social animals, humanity is distinguished from all of them by the tremendous, almost endless variability or diversity of human societies or ways of life. That is, what humans actually do as parents, as hunters, as economic actors, because of course all the animals are economic actors, as political actors. There are lots of animals who are also political actors. What humans actually do differs tremendously from one case to another, or from one place to another, in distinction to the virtual uniformity of animal societies. That is, of the actual behavior of animals of any species wherever you find them. Now, we know that the difference, the biological difference between genomes of various species, for example, between our genome and the genome of our closest relative, chimpanzee, are minuscule. We almost do not differ biologically. 99% of our genome is the same. And we are not that different from other animals. So our genome would be different some 80% from the genome of a rat, for example. But this means that, and yet chimpanzees and rats and all the other animals, they're uniform in their ways of life, and we are tremendously diverse. And this diversity, this difference, this colossal difference, cannot be explained by the little quantitative biological difference between our genomes. So the difference between human beings and animals, when we compare them, has to do with a difference in transmission of our ways of life, ours and animals. While all the animals transmit their ways of life, that is, their social orders, their behaviors, they transmit them primarily by the means of genes, their genes. They transmit them genetically. We human beings transmit our ways of life primarily symbolically. That is, by means of various traditions, and especially language. We transmit our ways of life primarily through language, not through genes. This symbolic transmission of human ways of life is what we implicitly call culture. And it is culture that separates humanity radically, qualitatively, not quantitatively, but qualitatively from all other animal species. And when we realize that culture is what separates humanity radically, categorically, makes it a different category from other species, this necessarily shifts the focus of the study of humanity from social structures to symbolic processes. And here we have arrived at the definition of humanity. Now we know precisely what humanity is. Humanity essentially is a symbolic, not social, cultural, not social phenomenon. Now, so this definition is foundational for us. Now we can start doing science of humanity because we know precisely what to focus on when we study humanity. When the science of humanity at last comes into being, and I hope that you, young people, will bring it into being, it will make use of the information collected in the social sciences, in some social sciences, not necessarily of theories such as Bourdieu, as somebody mentioned. This may remain completely irrelevant, but of data, of evidence collected, information. It will make use of such information, but it will not be a social science itself. Its subject matter, whichever aspects of human life it explores, will be symbolic process on its multiple levels. And the levels are, first, the foundational individual level of the mind, and the collective levels of institutions, nations, and civilizations, broadly defined. And of course, the multiple specific processes of which all these consist. The science of humanity will be a science of culture, and its subdisciplines will be cultural sciences. In contrast to the social sciences that exist today, but like biology and physics, this science of humanity will have an inherent general standard for assessing particular claims and theories of this science. As an autonomous reality, humanity is necessarily irreducible to the laws operating within the organic reality of life and the material laws operating within the physical reality of matter. It nevertheless exists within the boundary conditions of these laws, that is, within the organic and physical reality created by the operation of these laws. It follows logically that it is impossible without those boundary conditions. And therefore, all the regularities of autonomous phenomena existing within the boundary conditions of other phenomena, that is, organic regularities existing within the boundary conditions of matter, and cultural regularities existing within the boundary conditions of both life and matter, must be logically consistent with the laws operating within those boundary conditions. Therefore, every regularity postulated about humanity, every generalization, every theory, beginning with the definition of its distinctiveness, must entail mechanisms that relate that regularity to the human organism. Those theories cannot contradict the laws of physics and biology. I'll give you one example. There is a very popular theory now, especially in the West, and this is the theory of transgender people. It is believed, and laws, social laws are based on that the transgender desire, the desire to change one's sex, reflect human nature and one's true, real identity. That some people naturally may have an identity different from the one, as they say here in the West, the one that is ascribed, sexual identity ascribed as at birth. So one can be born biologically as a girl, but in fact have one's true identity is that of a boy. Now, this contradicts our, whatever we know about the biological nature of our species and of all such species. So, this theory, we know for sure, however popular it is wrong because it contradicts the laws of the boundary conditions in which we live. What? Yes. We shall continue with the further definition of humanity in the next class. And now we'll open for questions, right?
There are several questions.
Mhm.
I will dictate it for you. So
Mhm.
it's from Tiashi Biswas. Since social sciences were introduced with science by elite Americans who were actually interested in using social science and not empirical science to their advantage to gain power, can we then say that term social sciences was used to convince the Germans and industrialists to invest in humanities by scientifying the subjects? Is not
Can you
there
read to me the second part of it? Can we say that the term social science,
that the term social science was used to convince the Germans and industrialists to invest in humanities by sciencifying the subjects? Is not there an airy similarity between the above mentioned idea and how we treat social sciences as inferior to actual science and a last resort to this day, especially in a country like India? It's mostly from the last lecture.
Uh,
Yeah. So
uh-huh.
you want to address this? Want to continue? Want to? Maybe you can say it now.
Well, yes, it was indeed social sciences uh, were institutionalized in the new institution, American research universities that emerged only in the late 19th century. And they were so institutionalized, called sciences, to promote the selfish interests of certain American elites. And those institutions, nobody knew at that time the history of the emergence of the social sciences. If they did, if they knew that, they would immediately realize those were not sciences. But America at that time, United States, emerging as a very prosperous and leading Western society, other societies, all other societies adopted its idea of the university. And as a result, they also adopted their idea of the social sciences. They thought those were actually sciences of society, of humanity, but they weren't. I don't know if I answered this question or what.
Okay, maybe we'll start with the second.
Mhm.
It's from Deepanvita. It says that how does this idea of humanity being essentially symbolic and cultural gets complicated in context of AI and AI consciousness? Is not AI also implicated in symbolic and cultural processes through language and thought?
Of course, AI is a cultural and symbolic phenomenon. Uh, before we get, this is a very interesting question, but before we get to such a sophisticated question, we should understand more about humanity as it existed before AI. So I hope that we'll be able to discuss what new AI adds to humanity. Um, but it's too early for us.
There is one question from Indrani. It says that, ma'am, I have a question. Is humanity then constructed in a particular socio-cultural structure? And then there is a question aligning little bit from Rakesh. It says, in society, humanity is greater.
What?
It's,
In,
I think, half question. So it
yeah.
says that is, I think it's, mean is that in society, humanity is greater or what? It's a
Oh,
blank.
so could you read to me the first question first?
Is humanity then constructed in a particular socio-cultural structure?
No, humanity is not constructed in a particular social structure. Humanity is an emergent phenomenon. It emerges like life. Life is also an emergent phenomenon. What is an emergent phenomenon? An emergent phenomenon is a phenomenon that emerges suddenly by accident within particular boundary conditions. Like life emerged many, many, many million years ago in the inanimate material world of our Earth. Such emergence of life was clearly possible because if it weren't possible, it wouldn't emerge. It was possible, but it was highly improbable. So it emerges just by accident. And as it emerges, the moment it emerges, there is a break in continuity between the laws regulating the boundary conditions of this phenomenon and its own laws. There is a break in continuity between different causalities. So, the same with the symbolic reality of humanity. Humanity is an emergent phenomenon within the boundary conditions of biology, of human biology, within the boundary conditions of Homo sapiens. It emerges, the symbolic reality emerges by accident out of the biological reality. And the moment it emerges, it becomes self-creating, just like life. The moment the first cell emerges, life is self-creating. And it adds, just like humanity, both emergent phenomena. They add their causality to the causalities within which they emerge. So they are like miracles because they are more than the sum of their parts. All their elements are of a different nature than the whole. So all the elements of humanity are biological. If you take an individual, right, and you just see all the elements that we are composed of, they're all biological, all organic. And then you can break the organic into material. But in addition to this, there is also this huge, huge aspect that is symbolic. So there is something that is super added to the foundations with this new emergent phenomenon.
There is a related question, so I will dictate it for you. There are two questions almost aligned. So the first says the whole point is how come we explain that transcendental experiences which form the core of humanity into something objective as theories, whilst we advocate for the science of humanity. Then there is a line.
Okay, let
Yeah.
me maybe deal this.
Okay.
How can we explain transcendental experiences
Experiences, yeah.
which constitute
Core of humanity.
core of humanity? Those experiences are symbolic. And when we start explaining, this is what we'll deal in the next class. We'll go on analyzing the nature of symbols. And we'll start explaining specifically how certain of those transcendental experiences come into being. Now, could you read this question again? Because it is
Yeah.
a very interesting
So it
question.
says that how come we explain the transcendental experiences which form the core of humanity into something objective as theories, whilst we advocate for the science of humanity?
How we arrive at an objective explanation. Objective means reliable, the same for everyone. Reliable under any circumstances, while those experiences themselves are subjective. Is this what you are asking? The objectivity of the explanation has to deal with the explanation, not with the nature of reality. Because we explain this in the same, this subjective reality, in the same logical way that is tested by empirical evidence. How do we explain the movement of planets or such phenomena that nobody has ever seen or touched as gravity? The most important physical phenomenon is gravity. And yet, nobody has ever seen it, right? How do we know it is empirical? We know it is empirical from its expressions, from things that we do see, which only express gravity. We do not have the empirical experience of gravity itself, but only from its actions. For example, an apple that is falling from a tree, right? This is how Newton discovered gravity. But an apple falling from a tree is not gravity as such. The same is true about the phenomenon of life. We have never seen the process of speciation, which is the most important evolutionary process, the most important central process in life, the emergence of new species. We have never observed that. But from the analysis of the past, we can deduce this process and this law, right? So evolution, we have never observed, but the results of evolution we have observed, and we can analyze the results of evolution and arrive at the theory of evolution. Humanity, the study of humanity, is in a much better position in regard to the study of biology and physics in this respect, because every single one of us, every single one of you has direct knowledge, direct empirical experience of our subjective reality. Look into yourself. You all know amazing things that occur inside your mind. In addition to this empirical knowledge, then, we have, like in all the other sciences, the analytical knowledge, knowledge that we logically deduce from various results of actions. So yes, we can very easily translate our subjective reality, including the reality, transcendental reality, we know from ourselves, from our self observation. We can translate them into objective explanations.
Um, there is one question from Fiza, and she said that please ask from Professor. It's very relevant to this discussion. So I think this says that this science of culture that you speak of, would you say you would want to accommodate objectivity in this framework? If yes, how would you address cultural relativism within this? I think after this we'll stop
Okay,
the slide.
yes, I would like to accommodate objectivity, of course, because science, any science, is objective. Now, cultural relativity is one of the empirical characteristics and very important empirical characteristics of the reality that we want to study with this science. You remember we started from that. What distinguishes humanity from all the other animals? It's precisely the enormous variability of our cultures and societies, all of which we transmit symbolically. This is the focus of our study. We understand from the very beginning that cultural relativity is the central characteristic of our reality. And we want to understand it objectively. In every case, we'll start from the different layers of the cultural process. In the end, I hope we'll arrive to the topmost cultural process of civilization. Civilizations are varieties of the cultural process which are independent, completely independent of the other civilizations among which they can, with which they can coexist. Now in the world, there are three independent civilizations, and all the other cultures belong within one of them. Those three civilizations are what we may call Western civilization, Indian civilization, and Chinese civilization. People in them have completely different minds, completely different minds. They think differently, they feel differently, they interpret reality differently. One cannot understand humanity without taking this into consideration. This is not different from other sciences. different species, mammals and insects, are completely different, but they are both species of animals. One is not more animal than another. So there is the same relativity in biology that exists in humanity. And after all, material reality is not different. The sun, the star that is our sun, is very different from the moon in every respect. But they both are material realities, material to the same extent, but in different ways. Okay?
Okay, so it was really wonderful session. Thank you, Professor, and thank you all of you for joining on time. And so now we can close the session. And there is one thing I would like to clarify on the attendance, that in the end of the session, in the when all of these lecture will be combined, in the end you have to submit a reflection in 200 words. Would you
No,
like
not
no
200.
to
Two
it depends,
paragraphs,
two
yeah.
paragraph, it depends on you.
Mhm.
So there is no compulsion on the attendance, and since many of you are asking. And the second thing is, I don't have pdfs or e-version of books. You may ask your institute library to purchase books for you. And there are many articles available online which you can access, but those who cannot find, you may ask your institute library. So I cannot really provide you readings for that. And many of the readings I am sharing link for you in the group. So I hope it's all clear now. Okay, so see you all for the third lecture very soon next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.